Introverted feeling. How do I identify my core values? How do I hold on to a sense of my core values? And how do I communicate to the core values of others? I believe that some of the very best expressions of introverted feeling happen in the arts. It's a function that is hard to put into words. Partially, I believe it was Mr. Nathan Glass who said that it's the most variable of all functions. And so two INFPs could be unbelievably different because the values they hold would be unbelievably different. Nonetheless, Neil Young represents for me musically and not politically a sense of being able to communicate some real core, gentle values about human life and about loyalty and about people being kind to each other. I think about the song Ohio, which is merely a lament of a hippie protest and the National Guard getting involved. And I think it's possible with introverted feeling to focus in on it's a shame about the loss of life without being so broad stroke in our moral paintbrush to also, take fundamentally black and white stance on everything else. Like I can be, like I said, I'm pro-Nixon. That song's anti-Nixon. I'm pro-military intervention when necessary. That song is critical of military intervention when necessary. I'm anti dumb kids getting shot because they were disagreeing with the government. I'm anti that. So I think there's a nuance to it that's not quite there with extroverted feeling. I think extroverted feeling definitely has a us versus them, a tribal quality. I think there's a nuance that if you focus in on the loss of life being a shame, I think a lot of people get on board with that. Some very extreme conservatives get on board with that. I feel that when he verbalizes politically, I get lost. But I definitely feel there's an introverted feeling that I resonate with that I want to put into my music, that I want to put into the ways that I interact. Van Gogh, I know we all say Van Gogh, but apparently I learned in an episode of QI from Stephen Fry that it's GOGH, which if I keep saying, I'm going to expectorate all over this camera, so I'm going to say Van Gogh from now on. Van Gogh believed that he was communicating the gospel of Jesus Christ, God's love through paint, which from a sensing perspective is nonsense. From a sensing perspective, you want to express God's love, you read the Bible, or you put in the lyrics of a hymn, or you make a cheesy movie and show it on the Dove channel. But it's a very intuitive feeling idea that you'd be able to broadcast something as sublime as the love of God through a painting. Like so many people of strong introverted feeling, he felt profoundly misunderstood. And he was detached from sensing reality, but I think attached to a either intuitive and or spiritual reality. We think only a madman would cut off his ear and send it to someone. But what does it really say symbolically? It says you can't hear me. You can't hear me. You're not listening. Don McLean, who I believe to be another INFP, wrote a great song, American Pie, full of subtlety and nuance. And really the longest song I think that could be considered a pop song other than maybe Freebird. But Freebird's only long because of a huge guitar solo played by, I want to say Gary Rossington. But American Pie is long due to so many words and verses. He wrote another song called Vincent, in which he tries to, as one INFP, interpret the introverted feeling of another INFP. And that is Van Gogh. And he says in that song, you were trying your hardest to express something beautiful and sublime about God's intention for us through a painting. And he says, I get it. Nobody else got it. Maybe someday they'll get it. I am a great admirer of INFPs. Some of my closest friends and closest musical collaborators. I believe that FI gives you a grasp of beauty, and beauty that speaks to people, especially musically, that is hard to get anywhere else. I'm always trying. I mean, I have a set of values that are just mine, but my introverted feeling aspires toward the kind of sublime communication that INFPs have. I don't think I achieve it, but I've been blessed to be surrounded with them. My longest term musical collaborator, off and on for 30 years, writing songs and forming bands and performing songs and writing albums and stuff like that, is an unbelievably gifted INFP. Great songwriter, absurdly gifted instrumentalist and vocalist, and they don't fit well into this world. I think that means that those that are friends of INFPs have a responsibility to kind of appreciate them the way they are, not try to fix them. Because this world's not really designed well. I mean, you think it's not designed well for INTJs, it's even less well designed for INFPs. I want to communicate that kind of love for God, that kind of love for people, that comes from a spiritual place, comes from a place of hypostasis. Hypostasis is the idea of what's left over when all the temporary stuff is gone. And that's like saying, here's what's here right now. Compare that to what's going to be there in heaven, or what's going to be there when all the things that are here, the distractions are gone, and then focus on those things that actually matter. Hypostasis, I think, for me, is a huge element of what introverted feeling should be. That is, if we can get past temporal things, sensing things, get past the opinions of others to what does God say really matters? Art exists here in the temporary to communicate something about heaven, something about God's love, something about the gospel. Love on earth is merely a shadow of God's intention of the full expression of his agape to his bride, the church. And so, I believe in striving for a sense of valuing things that are absolutely eternal and important. And that would be pleasing God. That would be using the time we have here to become, to develop what God has given us into something as pleasing to God as possible. My belief about agape is if it's all the things God does to draw us into the relationship he wants with him, then a human expression of agape to others would be in helping them become who God intended them to be. So in part, that's things like loving you as if you had already become the person God has intended you to be, and for whatever flaws there are, helping you through those. Sometimes pointing out those things, and sometimes it's helping you to grow out of those ungodly things to the most godly version of yourself. But, so my psychometric role models for how would I express, how would I hold my values and communicate to others' values in situations where I feel like introverted feeling is the most valuable tool are Neil Young, Van Gogh, and Don McLean. Thank you.